Never underestimate the power of someone you've pushed too far, especially when they have the means to change your entire life. Stick around to see how I turned the tables on my mother-in-law after years of her cruel words and manipulation. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who would buy a house just to spite someone, but after 6 years of enduring my mother-in-law Diane's relentless criticism, something inside me finally snapped. My name is Audrey, and I married my husband Mark 7 years ago. We had a beautiful ceremony in a small chapel in Maine, surrounded by friends and family. Everyone seemed genuinely happy for us. Everyone except Diane. From day one, she made it clear that I wasn't what she had envisioned for her only son. According to her, I wasn't pretty enough, smart enough, or accomplished enough. Nothing I did was ever good enough. When I got promoted at the marketing firm where I worked, she dismissed it as just luck. When I cooked dinner for family gatherings, she would rearrange everything I had prepared, claiming she was fixing it. "You know, Audrey," she would say with that sickeningly sweet smile of hers, "Mark always dated such ambitious girls before you. It's nice that he decided to settle down with someone comfortable." For years, I bit my tongue. I smiled politely and tried to win her over, believing that if I just tried hard enough, she would eventually accept me. Mark would always tell me to ignore her comments, that it was just how she was, and that she doesn't mean any harm. But words cut deep, especially when they come from someone who should be welcoming you into their family. Last Thanksgiving was the breaking point. Mark and I had been trying to have a baby for almost 2 years with no success. It was a painful, private struggle that had taken a toll on both of us. We hadn't told anyone in the family about our fertility issues. It was too raw, too personal. We were all gathered around Diane's dining table. Her immaculate home in the suburbs of Boston was decorated with tasteful fall decor, and the table was set perfectly, as always. My sister-in-law Jennifer had just announced that she was pregnant with her 3rd child, and everyone was celebrating. 3 grandchildren from Jennifer, and still nothing from you two, Diane said, looking directly at me while raising her wine glass. "Mark, honey, are you sure you married a woman who can give you children?" The table fell silent. Mark's face flushed red. "Mom, that's enough." But Diane wasn't done. She leaned toward me, her voice lowered but still audible to everyone at the table. "Some women just aren't meant to be mothers, dear. Maybe if you weren't so focused on that little job of yours." I excused myself from the table and locked myself in the guest bathroom, tears streaming down my face. Through the door, I could hear Mark arguing with his mother, and her tearful apologies about how she didn't mean it that way, and was just concerned. When we got home that night, Mark was fuming. "I'm so sorry, Audrey. She had no right to say those things." "She never does," I replied, too exhausted to cry anymore. "But you always excuse it. That's just Mom being Mom." "Well, I'm tired of it, Mark. I'm so tired." For the first time, Mark didn't defend his mother. He held me close and promised things would change. But I knew they wouldn't, not unless I changed them myself. The following week, I discovered something interesting through a mutual friend. Diane had been eyeing a beautiful Victorian house in our neighborhood for years. It had been on and off the market, always just out of her price range. She would drive by it regularly, commenting on how perfect it would be for her retirement. The house had just been listed again, and Diane had already scheduled a viewing. What Diane didn't know was that my little job had turned into quite a successful career. 3 years ago, I had started a digital marketing consultancy that had grown rapidly. I had clients across the country and had recently expanded my team to 15 employees. While I had kept my success relatively quiet around my in-laws, mostly because Diane would always find a way to diminish it, the truth was that I was now financially independent and quite comfortable. I called my real estate agent that afternoon. "Nancy, you know that Victorian on Maple Street? I want to make an offer, above asking price. I want to make sure I get it." 2 weeks later, I was the proud owner of a stunning Victorian home with bay windows, ornate moldings, and a wraparound porch. The very same house my mother-in-law had dreamed of owning for years. When Mark came home that evening, I showed him the papers. "You bought a house? Without telling me?" He was shocked, but not angry, confused, but not upset. I bought an investment property, I clarified, and I have a plan. I explained everything to Mark, how I wanted to renovate the house and rent it out, how it was in a prime location and would appreciate in value, all true statements. What I didn't mention was the satisfaction I felt knowing I had purchased Diane's dream home right out from under her. Mark was surprised but supportive. If this is what you want, I'm behind you. But let's keep this between us for now. Mom's been having a hard time lately and I don't want to upset her. I agreed, all while thinking that Diane's hard time was about to get a lot harder. The renovation process took 3 months. I hired the best contractors in the area and spared no expense. Every detail was carefully chosen to create a home that was both modern and respectful of the Victorian architecture. Hardwood floors were restored to their original glory. The kitchen was updated with top-of-the-line appliances. The master bathroom now featured a clawfoot tub and a walk-in shower with rainfall showerhead. I poured myself into the project, visiting the house almost daily to check on progress and make decisions. There was something therapeutic about transforming this space, about making it mine. With each wall painted and each fixture installed, I felt a little piece of my confidence return. Confidence that had been slowly chipped away by years of Diane's subtle and not-so-subtle put-downs. During this time, I maintained a polite distance from my mother-in-law. We saw each other at family dinners and special occasions, but I was careful to keep conversations brief and superficial. If she noticed the change in my demeanor, she didn't mention it. Mark, to his credit, had started standing up to his mother more. The Thanksgiving incident had opened his eyes to the way she treated me, and he was no longer willing to let it slide. This led to some tense moments between them, but for the first time in our marriage, I felt like we were truly a united front. As the renovation neared completion, I had another interesting piece of information fall into my lap. Diane's landlord was selling her building, and all tenants would need to find new housing within the next 2 months. She had been renting the same elegant apartment for the past decade, ever since she sold the family home after her divorce. "Mom's really upset about having to move," Mark told me one evening. "She's been looking at places, but nothing feels right to her. She keeps talking about that Victorian she wanted to buy, but someone snatched it up before she could even make an offer." I nodded sympathetically, hiding my smile behind my coffee mug. "That's too bad. Maybe I could help her find something?" Mark looked at me with surprise and gratitude. "Really? That would be amazing, Audrey. You know how picky she is, but if anyone can find her the perfect place, it's you." The next day, I called Diane directly, something I rarely did. "Audrey, is everything all right?" Her voice held a note of suspicion. I wasn't usually the one to reach out. "Everything's fine, Diane. Mark mentioned you're looking for a new place to live, and I thought I might be able to help." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "That's thoughtful of you, but I doubt you understand what I'm looking for." I swallowed my irritation. "Actually, I recently invested in a property that I've been renovating. It's a beautiful Victorian home, and I'm looking for a tenant. I thought you might be interested in seeing it." Another long pause. "A Victorian? Where is it located?" "Maple Street, number 47. The sharp intake of breath was audible. That's the house I wanted to buy." "Is it? What a coincidence," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "Well, it's nearly ready for occupancy. Would you like to see it tomorrow?" Diane agreed immediately, her voice a mixture of excitement and resignation. I could almost picture her mentally calculating how to turn this situation to her advantage, how to make me feel small even as she benefited from my offer. The next day, I met Diane at the house. She was wearing one of her designer pantsuits, her silver hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. I had dressed carefully as well, choosing a sleek blazer and tailored pants that projected confidence and success. When I opened the door and Diane stepped inside, her mask of polite interest fell away. Her eyes widened as she took in the soaring ceilings, the restored staircase, the gleaming hardwood floors. "This is remarkable," she said, running her hand along the ornate banister. "You did all this?" "I did," I confirmed. I oversaw every aspect of the renovation. I gave her the full tour, watching as she fell more in love with the house with each room we entered. The kitchen with its marble countertops and chef's island. The living room with the original fireplace, now restored to working condition. The sunroom that looked out over the meticulously landscaped backyard. "It's exactly how I would have done it," she murmured, almost to herself. "Every detail, every choice. It's perfect." "I'm glad you like it," I said. "Would you be interested in renting it?" Diane turned to me, her expression calculating. "What would the rent be? I assume you'd give family a discount." I named a figure that was fair for the neighborhood and the quality of the home. Not discounted, but not inflated either. "That's quite steep," she said, her lips pursing. "It's the market rate for a property of this caliber in this neighborhood," I replied evenly. "But of course, you're free to look elsewhere." We both knew she wouldn't find anything comparable, especially not with her urgent timeline. After some negotiation, during which I held firm on the price but offered flexibility on the security deposit, Diane agreed to the terms. "I'll have the lease drawn up immediately," I said, extending my hand to shake hers. "Welcome to your new home, Diane." As our hands met, I saw something flicker in her eyes, a grudging respect, perhaps, or at least the recognition that I wasn't the pushover she had always assumed me to be. What she didn't know was that this was just the beginning. Diane moved into the Victorian house 2 weeks later. Mark helped her with the move, while I conveniently had important meetings that kept me at the office. In reality, I was giving myself time to prepare for the next phase of my plan. The lease I had drawn up was thorough and heavily favored me as the landlord. It specified that any modifications to the property required written permission. It outlined strict noise regulations. It even included a clause about regular property inspections to ensure everything was being maintained to my standards. All perfectly legal, if unusually stringent. I had also installed a smart home system throughout the house. Security cameras, exterior only of course, automated lighting, temperature controls, and a video doorbell. All of which I could monitor and control from my phone. For the first month, everything went smoothly. Diane settled in and even hosted a small housewarming party for some of her friends. I declined the invitation, citing work commitments. Mark attended briefly and reported back that his mother seemed happier than he had seen her in years. "She keeps talking about how perfect the house is," he told me. "She said it was like it was designed specifically for her. She even complimented your taste, Audrey. I think this arrangement might actually bring you two closer." I smiled and nodded, not wanting to burst his bubble of optimism. This wasn't about getting closer to Diane. This was about finally standing my ground. The turning point came during a family dinner at our house. Jennifer and her husband were there with their children, as well as Mark's younger brother David and his new girlfriend. Diane arrived last, making an entrance in a new dress she had clearly purchased for the occasion. "The house is treating you well, then?" I asked as I took her coat. "Oh, it's divine," she gushed, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I feel like I was meant to live there. It's such a shame the previous owners didn't maintain it properly, but I'm gradually putting my personal touch on things." I raised an eyebrow. "Personal touch? I wasn't aware you were making changes to the property." Diane waved a dismissive hand. "Nothing major, dear. Just a few adjustments to make it more livable. I had a gardener reshape some of the landscaping. Those boxwoods were terribly overgrown. And I've repainted the guest bedroom. That mustard color you chose was giving me migraines." Mark looked uncomfortable. "Mom, didn't the lease say you needed permission for changes like that?" "Oh, please," Diane scoffed. "Audrey doesn't mind. It's just a rental property to her. Besides, I'm improving it." Everyone at the table was watching us now, sensing the tension. I kept my voice calm and even. "Actually, Diane, I do mind. The landscaping was professionally designed, and that mustard color was Benjamin Moore's Golden Retriever, which happens to be one of the most sought-after shades this year." Diane's smile tightened. "Well, it's done now, and trust me, it looks much better." "I'm sure it does," I replied. "To your taste. But as we discussed when you signed the lease, any modifications require my written permission." I'll need to come by tomorrow to assess the changes and determine if they need to be reversed. The table fell silent. Mark cleared his throat nervously. Let's eat, shall we? The roast will get cold. Throughout dinner, Diane was uncharacteristically quiet. She picked at her food and barely participated in the conversation. When she did speak, it was with a forced cheerfulness that fooled no one. After everyone had left, Mark confronted me. Don't you think you were a bit harsh with my mother? Harsh? Mark, she violated the terms of her lease. If it was any other tenant, would you be questioning my response? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. No, I suppose not. It's just, she's my mother, Audrey. And I'm your wife, I reminded him. The wife who has endured years of your mother's criticism and condescension. The wife who was publicly humiliated at Thanksgiving when your mother suggested I was barren. Mark winced at the memory. You're right. I'm sorry. It's just hard being caught in the middle. You're only in the middle because you put yourself there, I said gently. This isn't about taking sides. This is about boundaries and respect. The next day, I visited the house as promised. Diane greeted me with a tight smile, her posture defensive. Come to inspect the damage? She asked sarcastically. I've come to inspect the unauthorized modifications to my property, I corrected her. Shall we start with the garden? As we walked through the house and grounds, I documented each change she had made. The repainted bedroom, the rearranged garden, the new light fixtures in the dining room, the replaced shower head in the master bathroom. I'll send you a detailed email outlining which changes need to be reversed and which can stay, I told her as we concluded the tour. As per the lease, you'll have 14 days to comply, or I'll hire contractors to do the work and bill you for it. Diane's face flushed with anger. This is ridiculous. They're improvements, Audrey. Any landlord would be thrilled. Any landlord would expect their tenant to follow the terms of the lease they signed, I countered, especially when that tenant is family and should know better. Is that what this is about? Diane asked, her eyes narrowing. Are you punishing me for something? I met her gaze steadily. This is about respect, Diane. Something you've never shown me. Respect? She scoffed. You want to talk about respect? You bought this house out from under me. Don't think I haven't figured it out. You knew I wanted this house, and you swooped in and bought it just to spite me. For a moment, I was taken aback by her directness. Then I smiled. Yes, I did. And now you're living in it, paying me rent and following my rules. Ironic, isn't it? Diane's mouth opened and closed, for once at a loss for words. You've spent 7 years making me feel worthless, I continued, my voice calm despite the emotion behind my words. 7 years of subtle digs and not-so-subtle insults. 7 years of questioning my value as a wife, as a potential mother, as a human being. Well, here's a reality check, Diane. I'm not worthless. In fact, I'm worth quite a bit. Enough to buy your dream house and turn it into my investment property. I turned to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and don't bother calling Mark to complain. He already knows about the lease violations and he agrees that you need to fix them. Have a nice day, Diane. As I walked to my car, I felt lighter than I had in years. For the first time since I'd met her, I had stood up to Diane without flinching, without apologizing, without doubting myself. And it felt incredible. The weeks following my confrontation with Diane were tense but transformative. True to my word, I sent her a detailed email outlining which changes needed to be reversed. To my surprise, she complied with minimal complaint. The bedroom was repainted. The garden was restored to its original design. The unauthorized fixtures were replaced with the originals, which she had fortunately kept in the attic. Mark was supportive throughout the process, though I could tell he was uncomfortable with the conflict between the two women in his life. One evening, as we were getting ready for bed, he broached the subject. Mom called today, he said, his tone careful. She asked if I knew that you bought the house specifically because she wanted it. I paused, my hairbrush midway through my hair. And what did you say? I told her I didn't know initially, but I wasn't surprised when I found out. He sat on the edge of the bed, watching my reflection in the mirror. I also told her that maybe this was a wake-up call, that she couldn't keep treating you the way she has and expect no consequences. I turned to face him, genuinely surprised. You said that to your mother? He nodded, a small smile playing at his lips. I did. And you know what? It felt good. It felt right. I've been letting her behavior slide for too long, making excuses for her because she's my mother. But that doesn't give her the right to hurt you. I crossed the room and sat beside him, taking his hand in mine. Thank you. That means more to me than you know. I should have done it sooner, he admitted. I always thought if I ignored it, if I pretended it wasn't happening, eventually things would get better on their own. But they never did. No, I agreed softly. They didn't. 3 months after Diane moved into the Victorian, something unexpected happened. I received a text message from her asking if we could meet for coffee, just the two of us. Curious and slightly wary, I agreed. We met at a small cafe downtown, neutral territory for both of us. Diane was already seated when I arrived, a cup of tea steaming in front of her. She looked different somehow, less polished, more human. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down across from her. I wasn't sure you would. I was intrigued, I admitted. This isn't exactly our usual dynamic. Diane smiled ruefully. No, it's not. But I think it's time for a new dynamic, don't you? I raised an eyebrow but said nothing, waiting for her to continue. I've been doing a lot of thinking these past few months, she said, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her cup. About you, about Mark, about the kind of mother-in-law, the kind of person I've been. She took a deep breath. I owe you an apology, Audrey. A real one. Not the kind I usually give where I say I'm sorry, but make it clear I don't think I've done anything wrong. I was stunned. In all the years I had known Diane, I had never heard her offer a genuine apology to anyone. When you confronted me about the house, about buying it because you knew I wanted it, I was furious, she continued. But then I started thinking about why you would do something like that. You're not a malicious person by nature. You've always been kind, even when I was not. She looked me directly in the eyes. I pushed you to this. With every dismissive comment, every backhanded compliment, every time I made you feel less than. And the truth is, I did it because I was jealous. Jealous? I echoed, incredulous. Of me? Diane nodded. Mark adores you. From the moment he met you, you became the center of his world. And I wasn't ready to not be the most important woman in his life anymore. She wiped at a tear that had escaped despite her best efforts. It's not an excuse, it's an explanation. And it's taken me far too long to recognize it. I sat back in my chair, processing her words. For years I had imagined this moment. Diane apologizing, acknowledging her behavior. But now that it was happening, I wasn't sure how to respond. I appreciate your honesty, I said finally, and I accept your apology. But Diane, you need to understand something. Mark's love for me doesn't diminish his love for you. There was never a competition until you created one. I know that now, she said quietly. It took living in a house that you own, following rules that you set, to make me see how I've been treating you all these years. The irony isn't lost on me. We talked for over an hour, more openly than we ever had before. About Mark, about our hopes for starting a family, about Diane's life after her divorce. For the first time, I saw glimpses of the woman Mark had always described to me. Smart, funny, warm when she allowed herself to be. As we were preparing to leave, Diane hesitated. I've been thinking about moving out of the Victorian. I was surprised. Why? I thought you loved it there. I do, she admitted. But every time I walk through those rooms, I'm reminded of how I treated you, of what I drove you to do. It doesn't feel right. I considered her words carefully before responding. Stay, I said finally. The house suits you. And besides, I'm making a good return on my investment. She laughed, a genuine sound that I had rarely heard from her. Always the businesswoman. But there will be some changes to our arrangement, I added. I'm amending the lease. You'll have more freedom to make the space your own, within reason. And I'm reducing the rent slightly. Diane looked at me with surprise. Why would you do that after everything? Because that's what family does, I replied simply. We forgive. We adapt. We move forward. The change in our relationship wasn't immediate or perfect. There were still moments of tension, old habits that died hard. But there was a new understanding between us, a mutual respect that had never existed before. 6 months after our coffee meeting, Mark and I received the news we had been hoping for. I was pregnant. When we told Diane, her joy was genuine and unreserved. She hugged me tightly, tears in her eyes. You're going to be a wonderful mother, Audrey, she whispered. I've always known that, even when I couldn't bring myself to say it. As I stand here now, watching Diane paint the nursery in our home, not the Victorian, but our home, I reflect on the journey that brought us to this point. How a house became more than just a property investment. How it became the catalyst for healing, for growth, for a new chapter in our family's story. Sometimes standing up for yourself means taking drastic measures. Sometimes it means buying a house just to spite your mother-in-law. And sometimes, unexpectedly, it leads to the very thing you've been seeking all along: acceptance, respect, and the knowledge that you are anything but worthless.